in general, you're going to hear a lot from Mark about the probably the Achilles heel of ground source heat pumps, and that being first cost. You're going to hear it from him. You're going to hear it from Garen, and we're taking these programs are taking that issue on head on. Mark Faulkenberry.
Thank you, Bob. I do appreciate your pocket too.
Yeah.
I'm more of a rover, so I'm going to have to stick this thing on. The Garen County knows what I said. No, I'm not bad at this. Okay, maybe I am. We really appreciate it. Kind of what Jack had stated is kind of where I want to start. What our vision is as an electric utility industry, and we're fixing to get into who we are, what we're about, and why we have the vision that we have. Our goal is to take your industry and move it from being a niche market to being something that's much more commonplace. And I need to explain to you that probably our vision is a little different. I've had some utility people. Darren will say, no, that big boy, he's kind of crazy or something. But you have to understand, our industry is going through some of the most dynamic changes that we've ever seen. So it's unprecedented change. And in the state of Oklahoma, we're going through unprecedented load growth. Anybody ever heard of the Mississippi Line Play and the Oklahoma Scoop? And I have electric cooperatives in our state that have quadrupled in size literally in the last 3 years. My utility is looking at growing more in the next 5 years than we have in the last 30. And what that correlates into is the building of new generation and transmission resources to cover the demand that's out there. And it just so happens that we have a president, if you haven't noticed, and I don't want to get into the political side, but those issues are becoming a major, major barrier and can have a huge impact on the cost of energy, not only in this state, but in the Midwest. It's estimated that as we move through the Clean Power Plan that we may only have one coal plant left in this region. And our CEO has already been coming out and starting to explain to consumers, some of our largest customers, that some of this could drive us upwards of 30% increase in utility costs in our state. And so as a member-owned cooperative, we have to start looking at how, what we call preparing our members for the storm. And we're literally pulling together a campaign. And what's interesting about it, let me kind of show you who we are and what we're about. Western Farmers is a generation and transmission cooperative. We serve basically 3/4 of the state of Oklahoma. As you can see, everything west of I-35, everything south of I-40, except this little piece. We had a little problem. We've got that worked out now. They don't want to be a part of us, and that's cool. Enough said. Okay? So why is that whole thing? Enough said. We also happen to be a very unique entity that we serve in another state, the eastern side of New Mexico. These 4 co-ops. And people say, Mark, how in the world do you get power out there? Well, we're a member of the SPP Power Pool. It's an integrated market, and it doesn't really matter anymore. I'm not going to get into that, but that's part of this dynamic, unprecedented change. Average ratepayer in the state of Oklahoma doesn't understand that Western doesn't generate its power anymore. We buy all of it out of the power pool, out of the integrated market. And so these dynamic changes have a lot to do in the means and the manner that our members use power and how we have to build generation. Okay? I don't want to get too deep in that, but you have to understand our footprint. Now this is us. This is Kevin Kelly right here. This is Garen. He's going, who are these monkeys following us? Western Farmers, our CEO is a very bright man, and he is a great leader in the fact that he's a visionary. And what Gary did is he started to realize quite a while ago that these carbon issues, these growth issues were forthcoming. And he did something that was shocking to us. He came to our marketing department and challenged us to work through an energy efficiency program and look for the means and mechanism to knock 30 megawatts out of the next power plant we're going to build. We know we're going to build it. We don't know how big we're going to build it yet, but we have a pretty good idea that it's going to be in the 18-19 time frame. What we're doing right now is we're purchasing capacity, blocks of energy in the integrated market that are firm path delivery of those to our system. We're trying to gap over till we build a power plant, because we've got to find out. In Oklahoma, we know what it's going to be. It's going to be a gas-fired plant because that's a state law, but we don't know how big it's going to be. And then there's all kinds of issues around congestion. Again, I don't want to get into those pieces, but you can see this is a very dynamic, moving piece that we're looking at. So we challenge us. Well, Kalen, he got put in charge of the responsibility. Wave your hand, Kalen. I used to have hair like Kalen. I used to be as skinny as Kalen. And then, no, I'm just kidding. I was never that skinny. But the problem is that they came out, and Scott Williams, our marketing manager right there, in this challenge, we did what normal utilities do. If you remember in 2010 when this came about, what did we do? There was a federal tax credit, and we came out with air source, and we had ground source, and we were kind of mimicking what the other utilities were doing, but we did something very different. We all have engineering backgrounds, and one of the things we started to realize, we wanted to monitor. It was kind of like sighting in a rifle at deer season. You go ahead and start shooting, and then you move to that target as you're zeroing in. What we found very quickly is that the SEER ratings and everything that are on these air source systems, they're wonderful for a residential consumer because they do. Aaron, as we know, they'll reduce energy, but believe it or not, we kind of like to sell energy. It's kind of like what we do. What we're looking for is legitimate efficiency, and what we found is that the ground source technology, as we educated our staff and started following these monkeys and asking questions and learning what was going on, is it was much more efficient to promote ground source technology to our members than it was to go in the air source direction. So what we opted to do is we wanted to prove, we were looking at Oak Ridge Labs, we looked at other stuff. Our CEO said, forget that, let's do it ourselves. So what we did is we took and put together a project working with the industry, Bosch, Climate Master, Cooperative Research Network. This is a research arm because we felt it important to have an independent third party that helped us do this research so people wouldn't believe that it was biased. And although it's a small statistical number, it is something that we took 22 locations spread all over Oklahoma and all over New Mexico, and we did something that had not been done. We sub-metered the existing air source equipment that the homes had in them. Some of them were natural gas heat, some of them were total electric, but what we did is in July, we're a traditional summer peaking utility, meaning that that's when the biggest demand's on our system. We sub-metered this equipment so we could establish a baseline of the demand and energy that that older 15-year-old system was requiring of our utility. Then, in 1 week, the industry worked together, we retrofitted all 22 of these locations, and we continued to sub-meter the ground source system so that we could correlate and learn, and more importantly, validate what we had seen from Oak Ridge Labs, other studies that Garen had done in our state, some great data. We just wanted to see it ourselves. You know what it is? So our CEO challenged us to do this. We did this back in, what summer was it, Caitlin? 13. In 13. Now, this is what we learned. Remember, we're a summer peaking utility, meaning that we have to have all these generation resources when it's 110 degrees because that's when everybody demands power from us. And what's interesting in this, as a member-owned organization, we found on all 22 locations that during that summer time frame, our members saved 41.2% savings. Pretty impressive number. We also learned, though, from our own perspective, that we saw an average kW demand reduction of peaking capacity of 2.2 kW per home. In addition to that, we were able to break it all the way down into a kW, which was 0.55. Now, Oak Ridge Labs, several others that we had seen, these numbers were more like 0.63, 0.62, and part of the reason that the difference is really here is that about 60% of our installations, because of their structure, didn't have the ability to install the de-superheater. I don't want to get too deep into that, but it is a part of a ground source system that enables you to take the heat out of the house before you take it to the loop and dump it into the hot water heater, dramatically reducing the amount of energy in the hot water tank itself. Good enough there? Explanation? Okay. So anyway, but even at 0.55, this is where our CEO became very intrigued. Big picture is our state has 1.4 million residences. And my battery just went up my laser pointer. Oh, there it is. Okay, if you do the math, very simply, and I'm an OSU grad, so I can do this math. 1.4 million homes, if we were to convert 25% of these, and we showed this to the Secretary of Energy, he was very intrigued, 350,000 homes, and by the way, Garen, what did you say our market penetration was in the state today? 2%? So we've got a little gap, but that's a number, this niche market concept. So if we could get 25% of those homes to go, and understanding that the average home in our state has about 3 tons of air conditioning, and understanding that each of those homes that we get 0.55 kW, ladies and gentlemen, that's 577,500 kW.
Big plant.
And that turns into 578 megawatts. And does anybody have any idea how big my biggest generating facility is in the state of Oklahoma? It's our coal plant, and it's 450 meg, and that's half as large as OG&E's largest coal plant. Okay? That correlates in today's estimated cost, and I think this number's underestimated, $1 billion of infrastructure that we're going to have to build. That's principal only. That doesn't include interest. That doesn't include the ramifications of carbon. It doesn't include maintenance and upkeep. And the CEO of our company are like, good job, boys, good job. Okay? So now they're saying we understand, we have the data, we see the model. Let's start looking to see how we implement and move forward. We also said, well, before we go there, let's look and see what the winter impact is. We know the summer benefits, let's look at the winter. We're still in the process of CRM. If everybody realized we had a really, really bad analysis time frame because we had an unbelievable winter last winter, and the winter before that was relatively mild. And then even when we did our summer data, we had a very mild summer when we did our comparisons, or we think that our numbers would have been even better than what they were. And Jack, I think part of that reason was, if you think when we were stressing that air source system, we never really got to the temperatures that Oklahoma typically sees through that time frame to really see the degradation of its performance. Whereas on the ground source side, it wouldn't have had any difference because we're still dealing with that constant ground temperature. But in the wintertime, what we decided to do is CRN said, let's go 2 paths. We'll normalize this, and they're about to deliver us these results. If you guys would like, I'd be happy to send that information back. From our side, we took the redneck approach. Okay? What we decided to do, I had a gentleman call me and he said, Mark, I've put in your system, I'm participating in your program, but I only saw a reduction of 26%. And the industry had told me that I was going to see something more like 50%. So I said, you do realize how much colder it was this winter than the winter you're comparing, because that's what he was comparing it to, was the information his utility had given him. I said, well, why don't we do this? Let's go and get your 10 neighbors, and let's see what the impact was on their bills during those same 2 time frames. So we did that, and in this particular individual's case, what we found is these are his 10 neighbors. The group average actually saw an increase in cost of 27%. He saw a decrease of 26%. And even those guys down in Norman, Paul, can figure that that's over 50%. Okay? And so when we looked at this group, you can clearly see some of these that are easily identified as natural gas or propane. So when we pulled those out and looked at just those that were an electric heat comparison, 38% increase, 26%. We now are hitting what we had been projecting that we were going to hit. The problem was the consumer didn't understand it. I want you to be listening to these things because this starts to tie into where we start to work with IGSHPA and the industry and others to educate people, to produce tools and mechanisms to help people that have invested the money in what people believe to be a Cadillac heating and air conditioning system to treat it as such. Okay? So, this was what we found for all of them. We went back and said, you know, that's an interesting analysis. We found that the GEO systems averaged a 21% decrease in energy. That's about a $120 reduction. Their neighbors averaged 29% increase, $253, $373. Now, you got to realize this is just over a 3-month period of time. Okay, now these are on the total electric. Now let's take a look at those that were propane. What was unique about the fact that we were sub-metering these heating and air conditioning systems after the fact? We could calculate back to the source BTUs that the ground source system provided. Since we could do that, and this was an example, another individual said, Mark, my bill went up $25. I was like, dude, do you realize how much colder it was? You were propane heat, you've converted to total electric, even your hot water, and you only saw an increase of $25. But it was like, yeah, but I really thought it'd be a little better than that. So what we were able to do, because we had the data, again, these are some things you need, we had the data to help him understand that his heating system provided this number of BTUs for heating and hot water. And then we could, since we're at source energy, we could calculate back as to how many gallons of propane that he would have had to have used in an 80% efficient furnace, which is what he had before, to produce the same amount of BTUs. And once he was able to see, oh my, 398 gallons at a very conservative price of $2.50, in a 2-month period of time, his ground source system cost him $25 and he saved $1,344 in propane cost in 2 months. So these things started to hit home, and we started to realize it's very beneficial for our members, our consumers, everyone else. And now let's look at it from the utilities perspective. What we found very interesting is in the proper sizing of our ground source systems, we were able to identify that the auxiliary heat trips, that the backup pieces were there, only came on 3 times. And it was in one 5-minute interval. So as a utility, we look at demand cost over a period of an hour. So this basically to us meant that there was no correlation of an auxiliary heat strip. The ground source system, even this was in the coldest winter that our state had had in years. So with proper sizing of the loop and the system and the home's envelope and its insulation system, we saw no contribution. Now, the reason this is significant is because Western this year hit the largest winter peaks that we had ever saw in 2014. December, January, and February, each month took it off. Remember how cold it was last winter, how much terrible weather we had? So as a utility in this new integrated market, we had to start looking at what's driving our cost even through the winter months. And our CEO again comes out like, good job, boys. He likes what he's seen a lot. And so we're starting to really get a feel that this technology is someplace that we really feel that we need to move, but we still have a couple of problems. One is the cost. A few other little things that we're going to talk about because we have all of these people's perceptions that ground source is very expensive, and so we had to start working through some of this. The last thing that we did we found very interesting, CRN suggested that we survey all of the participants. This was probably the most eye-opening to us of all. We asked them if they were satisfied. We had 68%. Remember, there's 22, so you can kind of do the math back. I'm assuming there's a lot of engineers in here, so I don't have to show you the numbers, but it's 68% extremely satisfied. But this is where this became an issue. Have you contacted the installer manufacturer with any issues? 59% said yes. Now remember, these were dealers that were handpicked, that knew these installations were going to be put in place, and they knew they were going to be in a tremendous amount of scrutiny. And we still had 59%. Now I'm not going to get deep into what those issues were, but a lot of them would have been completely fixed if it had been for proper training and proper installation. Because as you'll look, we'll see here in just a moment, this was maybe the bigger one. How many of you seen difference in your electric bills? Now you saw the data I just showed you. 45% said bills lower, but we had 45% of these people that we know have saved thousands of dollars that don't even know if they've saved money or not. Now what's interesting about that, we intentionally asked that question because guess who didn't help them understand that? First of all, the dealer didn't. I don't think he cares. Okay, he went out, he installed the system, it's working right, done, I'm out, I'm going somewhere else. The manufacturer, they didn't follow up to help them understand. Then the question becomes, well, the electric utility did it, is it their responsibility to do it? Guess what? They didn't. We're about to sit down and go to each one of these participants at the end of this and sit down for the first time and really show them how much they've saved. The reason I mention that again is there is a gap in the industry. Somewhere, somebody has to help somebody. They bought a Cadillac and it's getting great mileage. And it's not happening today. These are the things that from a utility perspective, as we join IGSHPA and we do things to try to dynamically change the industry. We have co-ops today, I'm fixing to show you a model that we have a vision of owning 80% of the new home construction market in the state of Oklahoma. I want you to understand what I said, 80%. We currently have 2. You say there's no way. I'm going to show you how it's happening, and I can show you co-ops, and Garen's heard them. Our distribution cooperatives using the model that we're working with on how we're trying to get there. This one's also interesting because this is the one that intrigued us. That first slide really scared our CEO because in the model that we're talking about, we're attaching our 100-year credibility as a utility with our member-owned organizations, and we're attaching it to the caboose of this industry and its dealer network. And I can tell you, our CEO, and if Dan was here, he would know, as he saw the results of this survey and the data, he asked every CEO from the major manufacturers to have a visit with him. Some of those were in person, some were on the phone. He said, we like this, but if you want us to continue, you're going to have to fix this, or we can't play. And that's where we're at today. These people are looking at formulating. That's also why we're here today to say to you, help us fix this. Because there is a huge potential. And I haven't even scratched yet a couple of other items that are complete game changers for this industry. But this was what was interesting to him. 90% said that even with those problems, they would recommend it. 100%, and Scott and I were talking, we have never had 100% on any survey we've ever done with our members for anything. But 100% of them said that they were satisfied with the program that their co-op brought to them. Now, if you know energy costs are going up and you're a member-owned organization, what are you seeking now to bridge that relationship with that consumer to show them that you still love them and that we're trying to help you get through the storm? You do programs that give you something like this, 100% satisfaction. But you only do it if, in fact, it's not going to cause you problems because on the backside, the industry and the technology is causing a bad credibility issue for you. Okay? And then 90% said, yep, my level of satisfaction with my co-op came up, so this was a question to stack onto this. And last but not least, should your co-op continue? 95%. This got the attention of even some of the CEOs at our co-ops. And you're saying, well, Mark, this all sounds really good. How do you move it forward? If you think about a ground source system, the technology itself, as we started to look at it, is that really this loop is no different than us delivering energy. We're delivering a renewable energy service, and we can do it in a different fashion. So the concept is, instead of saying, hey, how do we drop that price down to get people to do this? Why don't we take and offer the ground loop as a utility service? Let's treat it just like we do our wires and poles that we build to the house. We set wire, we set poles, we set a meter. We sell kilowatts of energy. What if we were to go in and have an easement, set this at the home, set us a disconnect here at the outside, but instead let's just meter it. Instead of metering, let's just charge like we would a mercury vapor light. Let's just charge a fixed cost per month for the thermal energy that the electric utilities ground source system provides into the home. I don't have to meter that. And as a utility, what makes it very different, whereas most homeowners in our state only have the home for maybe 6 to 7 years, and thus when they're making a decision on a ground source, they're like, man, I don't know if I want to make that investment because I can't get that return. What we're doing is we're taking about a third of the cost of the ground loop system out, owning it as a utility and amortizing that cost over a 30-year period of time. And don't get us wrong, we're not doing it for free. We're still doing it for a 7% rate of return, which is the exact same rate of return that we get on our utility services. The concept works very solidly. For the first time, we have home housing additions in our state that 100% of the homes, 560 home housing additions, everyone going geothermal. And the co-ops that are starting to move in this direction are being very successful in getting mindset and dealer change and so forth. You're saying, well, golly, Mark, that sounds so good. You know, again, what we're talking about is this co-op owning it, they're installing it, they maintain it. It's just a service, it's a utility service. And we do it in a fashion that looks something like this. Your consumer actually has the contractual arrangement for the thermal and electric service from the co-op. The co-op has HVAC contractors that it's pre-approved to put their systems to our loops. They do the design, they actually size the ground loop for us. And then the same thing here, we actually contract with the drillers. And the reason we felt IGSHPA was a great fit for us is because guess what? All these people are your members. And we thought, well, we better be a member because we need to get into this network and start to work with them to make sure that all of these installations are done and done well. Because when you're trying to change the industry, when you come out of the gate, you're under a tremendous amount of scrutiny. And it don't take but a few poor installations. And I'm going to be candid with you, and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. This industry has been its own worst enemy in not being able to make sure that the people that were installing their product did it properly. It gave a bad name to a lot of installations. Now, my son goes to this school right here, mechanical. And it would be interesting of what he has heard and talked to me in this university, even about this technology, of what his professors have said. Because he hears Dad talking about it, and then he gets to talking about it, and I find that an interesting dynamic. That even within our own academic community, that there's questions around this. And so I think we even have some internal education that we have to work with through that. But you say, well, how would that work? What does it look like? 3-ton system, $18 to $22 a month. Guys, that's a relatively inexpensive cost for thermal energy and all of it that you want to use. We came at this like the concept of saying, make it like cable TV. We don't care how much you watch it. It's a fixed cost per month. We'll amortize that cost, make a rate of return, and by doing this, we dramatically reduce the upfront cost of going geothermal. Couple that with some rebates, and some of our co-ops even going a step further to provide low-interest financing packages, and you end up with a huge turnover in people's mindset of what it really costs. Again, you're saying, golly, man, everybody wins through this. The homeowner gets a low cost investment. The distribution cooperative that's doing this, they lower the cost of power, and they set a potential new revenue stream for their utility. The co-op members, every co-op member, not just the ones that put in GEO, remember, because it reduces the demand cost, 2.2 kW, every little home that does it, that flows through that co-op's purchase cost adjustment because it's reducing my wholesale cost of power, and it incrementally makes every kilowatt that every consumer that buys power from that co-op goes down. Now, it's small amounts, but again, little numbers make big numbers. And then Western farmers, this helps us hopefully not have to build some future capacity, or at least defer it. And then the big one is the carbon. Anybody heard of the Clean Power Plan? We're dealing with it a lot right now. And this is very alarming and concerning to us. And I think Garen's going to get into some of those dynamics, and I'm going to stay away from. But this and the environmental issues are literally, potentially the game changer, and it is a moment of truth for your industry, in my opinion. Is because we have to take advantage of this time. And some of that even has to be done locally within our own state, because if you're familiar with that EPA plan, the state of Oklahoma has been given the direction to take and establish its own program. Now, right now, the state's trying to make a decision, do we want to do this or not? But if that happens, we're going to need industry, IGSHPA, a lot of other people to go down and help them understand that this is about energy efficiency. I don't want to get too deep in this, but one of the levels in this is asking electric utilities between 2020 and 2030 to come up with a 1.5% energy reduction every year through 2030. These are some of the mechanisms that you can do that, but there's other issues that lay within that, because when we switch someone from propane heat to total electric GEO, we see a net reduction of carbon, but we could actually see a little bit of an increase in the utilities' carbon footprint. So these are things that we have to work together to educate our legislature at the national level as well as at the state level to be able to move forward with. But I really do believe that it could be a big game changer. I've tried to get through that quickly. If there are any questions, let me know, because I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I want to give you the full meal deal. Okay? This is where this gets interesting. Why are more people not doing this? I currently only have 4 co-ops. Should be a no-brainer. Everybody wins through this process. We've even been to Washington, D.C. They have no problems lending us as a utility this money at a very attractive interest rate to go and install these. This is the issue. Everyone is very concerned, and they're watching these 4 co-ops that are currently doing this and taking the wait and see. They're very concerned to put their reputation on the line because of the survey results that we saw earlier. I don't want to get my members out in deep water and make all these investments and have a bad reflection back on our credibility because we attached our boat to your boat and your boat didn't deliver. So, again, that's why our CEO called all these others and said, hey, help us help you. And this got broke down into really 4 areas. And in the last few moments that I have, what I want to do is show you our vision of how OSU and IGSHPA could really start to help us look at all of these. I told you before that almost all of our problems were dealer issues. Kaylin we about pull our hair out because remember, we were the monkeys following, but we're pretty smart. We learned pretty quick. And we were seeing things that were absolutely ridiculous on these installations. Inadequate air return. That it was just even as novices that we would walk up and be able to see things that should have never been done. And so that ties back into training and manufacturer issues. Let's go ahead. But as we look at this, we were asking these dealers to do a manual J and a manual D. And I don't want to get in, most of you are probably familiar. They didn't know how to do it. And we're like, what an opportunity for IGSHPA or someone to make sure that we have these HVAC contractors that are qualified. We wanted to see, we have certification, but we want to see what we call legitimate. We would like to see a CPA for GEO. We want to know if we're going to hire a contractor to be on our pre-approved list, that he knows what the heck is going on and he knows what he's doing. We have to have a higher level of certification as a utility before we're going to hook our boat up there, Jack. And so as you look at that, then professional development, technology transfer, all of these are things that we were shocked. Now part of that is because we serve in rural areas and we deal with a lot of HVAC contractors in those areas that are smaller. But I will say this, we found as many problems with some that were in the metroplex as we did some of those guys that did a great job out in the rural areas. So it was a very interesting dynamic. It wasn't just about the size and the scope of their company or the cost that they were charging. It had more to do with their professionalism and what they knew and what they were committed to do. Another interesting thing in this is that we found there was a big difference. A lot of heating and air conditioning contractors sell and promote air source and they play with GEO. There's not a lot that are committed to geothermal, and we've even had things through some of our programs that we kind of got them thinking GEO, and that dealer, because he did both, he wasn't committed, like the pig is at breakfast. You've heard that story, haven't you? Chicken and the egg, which one's more committed to breakfast as a meal? Okay? We find there's a lot of chickens out there in the industry, and what they'll do is they'll quickly turn to the air source side. That doesn't benefit us. We want to stay focused on that other side. So with that aspect, then we get into manufacturer issues, and these are just ties that we see that the industry could work. We were astonished that a lot of our issues were around the thermostat. Okay, we got into a situation, I had a little old lady, super sweet lady. She had a $600 electric bill on our program. Okay, that shouldn't happen. She put in a geothermal system. She was confused. Well, what had happened is her dealer had put in a setback thermostat. And he had set that to go back to 62 degrees. Well, when it got really cold last winter, guess what she did every day? She went over there and she did this. Well, if you know anything about a ground source system, it didn't have the ability to recover, so what came on? The auxiliary heat strips. So she was using electric resistance at a COP of what, 100%? Maybe, not compared to her ground source system that had a COP of 4. And so she ended up with a very large bill because she was using electric resistance heat with her ground source. Why? Because she had a thermostat on there that was set back that the dealer installed by error. It wasn't even the manufacturer's thermostat. And so it's these little things, but what we found interesting is why can't we develop, and there's technology out there, but it's not attached to the ground source systems. I don't understand with Wi-Fi in almost every home that a lot of these are going into, why the industry can't have a thermostat that says, hey, my auxiliary heat strip's coming on a lot. Hey, my COP's not being hit. I'm monitoring these 5, 6 points. And what you guys know, that literally from what we understand, there's about 6 things that you can monitor and you can tell a lot. Or more importantly, why can't we monitor the number of BTUs of heating that's being provided so that somebody can come in and use some sort of a web interface that gives us an energy usage dashboard that shows them, you bought a Cadillac and man, she's getting great mileage. These are the things that as a utility, we step back and just scratch our head. We're like, why are we not there? Because everything we're seeing, we're loving, but we see these are all opportunities for the academic group, such as yourself, IGSHPA, and the industry to work with the utility industry, because we do see a tremendous amount of opportunity, even in the marketing, research, and development side of this. Some of the things we find interesting is that the manufacturers, the survey results that we showed them, they had never seen that type of information. Why couldn't IGSHPA and some of the I think it'd be a great master's degree program to start to look at some of these data and information that they're picking up of people that have installed ground source systems so that we can learn how to be better.
I said that already.
You did say that? Okay, we need to do that then. Driller issues. If our vision is going to come forward, we have to have thousands of ground source installations. And I can tell you right now, we have some good drillers in our state. We had absolutely no problems with what we drilled, but we do not have enough to keep up with the volume. The co-op that's doing the most is Cattle Electric down in Binger, and they struggle at times to be able to get a loop to be put in 2 to 3 weeks because they don't have a driller network that's large enough to be there when they're needing. Remember, I only have 4 co-ops. We don't have enough drillers now to get it done. I don't want to get in the driller business. What we want to do is partner with drillers that want to grow and want to work with IGSHPA to make sure that they can grow their business. Maybe we do things uniquely. Maybe we loan them money as a utility at a low interest rate to expand their business model. We have to think out of the box on how to do things out of the box. Another big one to us, remember, if we're going to be putting in literally thousands of ground loops, we want IGSHPA to help us understand how to do that at the lowest possible cost and with the lowest possible cost equipment. Now, I know that we've looked at slinkies, we looked at other things, but when I was at the IGSHPA meeting, we were literally in a position that I'm looking at all these technologies and I'm looking for Roshan and said, who do I need to talk to that can really lower my cost of putting in a loop by 20%? I mean, that's the stuff we're looking for because we're not looking at doing 1 loop, we're looking at doing thousands of them. So we have to think differently there. Industry issues, and I've got just a few minutes. I want to really rally here. One of the things that we struggle with is that your industry is getting killed by the solar industry. I mean, getting killed by it. The reason is, when you see solar ads, what do you see? Do you see a company's name on it? When you see propane ads, what do you see? Buy propane. What do you see when you see ground source?
My water furnace.
Buy water furnace. Buy Climate Master. Me. Why can't we form something? Because as utilities, we would be happy to start to put money into something that promoted the technology, but don't ask me to pick Climate Master or Water Furnace or Bosch, that's the horse I want to ride. Help us find a mechanism. Have you seen what the Natural Gas Association is doing now? They promote natural gas. We need to be doing the same thing. Legislatively, we're going to need some help. This is another big one. I've just got a couple minutes. This environmental research, this carbon is such a huge asset. We're trying to find a way to work through somebody that can help us validate the carbon reduction. Because this is huge. If we can use the carbon reduction from our thermal loops, we're already being able to do it as a renewable resource, a part of our renewable portfolio requirements. But if we can take and have the technology that says, Here's the BTUs that were offset. Here's the verifiable carbon reduction that this utility, because its ownership of that loop is achieved. We may use this to be able to postpone the death of our coal plant, which lowers the cost of power to our industry. Others, we realize that IGSHPA is a 50C31. Yeah. But our problem is you can't do, but we may need your help to talk to legislators as we work through these issues to help them understand what's going on as well. We know you can't lobby, but we can use your help to help them understand, because they don't get this. And they really, one that's concerning to us is the biggest market for us is a propane switch. I mean, it's best of both worlds. I mean, I'm a marketing guy, so if we flip propane, we actually see an increase in kilowatt hour sales, a decrease in demand, and the environment sees a net reduction in carbon. But guess who's going to fight us tooth and nail at the Capitol? The propane industry. They don't like the sound of this because they're saying that electric utility, them dogs, and the gas industry. So, I mean, we're not asking you to pick teams. And then the other one is, has anybody ever thought about kind of measuring what's coming out of all those little gas? They measure everything coming out of my power plant. You got the stacks. I'd like to kind of see what's coming out of all those little flues that are out there everywhere. And, you know, we might be interested in funding something like that, Paul. You know,
We do that.
we might be interested in seeing what that looks like.
Yeah.
Let's see. That's it. Did I get done in time, Bob?
Well, sort of.
Okay. Well, I lost the bet. But anyway, we do really appreciate it. It's been a great opportunity to be able to start to work with the industry and start to move us forward. There's been some great things that they're starting to work on. We're talking about a utility workshop that's just utility focused, so we're excited.
Mention GoGoGeo challenge to segue into the next one.
Okay, one of the things that the industry has done really well is we brought to them an education program called our GoGoGeo Challenge. It was basically a 2-year program. It started out as a high school video competition where we challenged high school juniors and seniors. We gave away $50,000 in college scholarships. If you haven't watched some of those, you got to go back. The guy that won it, it was called Dorothy Goes GEO, and I'd never seen hair on Dorothy that long on his legs with little slippers. But it was an innovative way of tying social media and getting these kids to get their friends to go and vote for them. But more importantly, they got mom and dad and grandma and grandpa to go and watch the video, and we educated them about geothermal technology through their children. And we were educating the next generation and all the schools. The next step was to start to challenge homeowners to see how much they could save. And now we're looking at moving forward and working with IGSHPA to challenge schools to see how much they can save, and that will segment right into erosion. Anyway, thank you so much for your time.
Mark, wait, before you go, I have a question for Jack and Dan, and I don't remember this discussion in Tulsa, but is there something in the plan for IGSHPA 2.0 where as a board and advisory council, you will prioritize things we need to work on at IGSHPA
Yes.
that match Mark's
Absolutely.
slide?
Yeah.
Well, not necessarily match Mark's slide, but we're going to prioritize.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
No, I like his idea better.
I said nature. I said nature. You said what you said. You just said it better.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bart.